In this tutorial, we're going to cover how to draw top-down layouts. We'll specifically focus on Counter-Strike, and in this tutorial I will use defusal, DE map type. However, if you do not map for Counter-Strike, you will still get a lot of value from this tutorial. We'll cover 3 different methods that you can use to create a drawing of a top-down layout, which will be used as a template to start your BSP blocking process. Now, there's a few things that I need to mention before we get started. First, there are some people who do not like to create a top-down layout, and that is completely fine. There are many different ways and methods of creating a map. In my case, I recommend and enjoy creating a top-down layout. It helps me to visualize and know exactly what my map is going to play like. I can figure out spawn point positions, pathways, connected routes, alternative routes, choke points, bomb sites or hostage locations, and any time in the past where I jumped right into the editor without creating a layout, it doesn't work out for me. So it's been my experience that a top-down layout has helped me to create maps. Second, your top-down layout should only be used as a template, as a starting point for your level. Once you block in your layout with BSP brushes, your layout may change based on constant gameplay testing and iteration. So what you've originally drawn may change dramatically based on the feedback that you get. So make sure that you don't stick to your original top-down layout and try to fit that in, because gameplay is more important and it will tell you what you need to change. Each of the methods that you will see can be mixed and matched, and the method that you use will depend how much you have figured out and know of what your level will look like. And I will explain each method and why I would use it as we begin. This first method works best when you have an idea of what your map is going to play like, and you have thought about the layout. So you may not know exactly what the architecture or geometry is going to be, but you do have an idea of where the spawn points are going to be, where the bomb site locations or hostage locations are going to be, and how each team will get there. So you have somewhat of an idea of how the layout and the pathways for each team are going to connect. With this method, you start off with simple pathway flow. So you don't think of boundaries of the actual map, but you only focus on simple lines. These are pathway lines. So you start off with the attacking team first. If it's a defusal map, you start with the T team, and you begin to draw main pathways of how the T team will get to the bomb sites. You only focus on the essentials of the layout, such as the main pathways, connecting pathways, choke points, bomb sites or hostage locations, and spawn points. And you have to keep this very simple, just straight lines starting from spawn locations of the attacking team and extend them out to connect to the map's objectives. Once you've completed the basic pathway flow, then you take another piece of paper, lay it on top, and you use that basic flow as a template to draw over and begin designing of how the actual map layout may look like. So during this stage, you're actually drawing boundaries of the map. Here I went ahead and removed the pathway flow from the bottom, and I keep it off to the side, and I'm always referencing it because that is my template to follow. And as I'm drawing this, I am visualizing as if I was spawning inside the map and what I would do as a player. Which path would I take? Where would I fall back on? What is the cover like? Where are the connected routes? So I'm actively visualizing from the first person as if I was playing that map, and I'm drawing those boundaries and those walls and those pathways while being mindful and always referencing the basic pathway flow that I just created. And as I've mentioned earlier, this layout is a starting point for me to use to block in the BSP layout. But in the end, the layout may change based on feedback from playtesting. And now as I'm finishing this up, I color in the solid blocks to identify and see pathways better. The second method works best when you don't know what your map layout is going to be and you are stuck and can't quite figure out what to do with each section. So you're not sure what the A site or B site is going to look like. You don't know where the CT spawns are or what they are. You don't know where the choke points are, where the middle is, and you kind of have that creativity block and you can't point your finger on how the layout is going to come together. For this particular method, it's best that you pick one section of the map, one area, such as CT spawn, T spawn, any of the bomb sites, or choke points, and begin to design and draw just that one section. So all you're doing is picking an area and then trying to figure it out how it's going to play, how the player is going to travel through it. So first I started off with CT spawn. I visualized how would CT team start off in order to rush to the bomb sites and begin defending. Then I picked B site and I started to design that, thinking how would B site look? Where would T team enter from? Would they have a single path choke point? Would they have double entry choke points? And as I'm drawing these individual sections, I have no idea what they should look like. I am simply picking one section of the map and begin to visualize and design from it. So this method is more free-flowing and it works great when you have no idea what each section of the map should look like. So after starting with CT spawn, then continuing on to B site, I decided that I needed to define what T spawn and the pathways to the B site is going to look like. So I started with the T spawn and began to design the layout of how the player will spawn and which pathways would they take in order to attack the B site. I also began to define the middle choke point and the middle section. With each section that I pick and design the layout for, it gives me an idea of what to do with the next section. So it really doesn't matter which section you start with. I would probably start with an area that I know what it's going to look like. So it would give me a starting point. And then from then on, I would continue and each section would build upon the next. And the ideas would begin to flow. For the last section, I picked A site and I began to design the layout just for that area. I started off with the CT spawns, taking into consideration how I already had the CT spawn designed in the first drawing, and then I expanded and began to think of how the CT team would arrive to defend the A site, where the choke points would be for the T team, and where the T team would come from in order to break through those choke points. Then once I've had each section figured out and had a better, clear understanding of how the layout of each area is going to be, I grab another piece of paper, lay it on top, and now it's time to combine all those sections into one layout. So I begin to draw over and refine the boundaries of the map and each section. Then I begin to connect other sections that I already designed by moving paper over and combining them together. I now end up with a simple, clean, top-down layout, which then I begin to go over and refine a little further by deciding where the boundaries of the map are going to be, coloring in the solid blocks for clarity, and just adding a few additional layout elements to clarify some sightlines, pathways, and I finish off by where I want the choke points to be and the spawning pathways for T team and CT team. If I had to pick, then this method would be the one that I enjoy and work with the most. I often sketch layout sections of the map without having to create an entire layout all at once. This allows me to work on one area at a time without having to come up with the entire layout all at once, which tends to be daunting at first, especially when you don't have a clear idea of what you want your map to play and look like. And to finish this up, here I'm drawing some pathway lines from CT team and T team to help me better understand the pathway flow. I finish off with this method by grabbing another piece of paper, placing it on top, and drawing a simple, clean pathway layout. This helps me to break everything down into main pathways, connected pathways, choke points, bomb site locations, and by redrawing a pathway flow, I'm attempting to extract the essence of the map. And this will be used to begin to define the BSP layout and the timing of each choke point. So in the end, I have a pathway flow and a top-down layout, which all started by focusing on one section at a time. This third method works best if you have thought about the layout a lot and you know exactly what it's going to be. Maybe you've already drawn this layout a few times before. Maybe you've even blocked this in to see what it will look like. Or maybe this layout is being created from an already existing place. So in this situation, you know what the pathways are going to be, where the choke points are, where the spawn points are, and what each section of the layout is going to be. With this last method, I begin by defining the entire layout all at once. So I start off with one section and I begin to expand to the rest of the environment. In this case, I started off with A site from CT position, and from there I begin to expand to the middle and to B site. I prefer to work on this method when I've already created a few layouts with similar pathways. I may have used method 2 or 1 already, and I am redrawing the layout based on some changes. So this is a perfect method when you already have a clear idea of what the layout is. Maybe you've even blocked in this map already and playtested it, and now you just want to go back and have a top-down layout on paper based on what you already designed. You could also attempt to use this layout in a similar manner as method 2, where you just begin with one section of the map, and instead of focusing on various sections and then combine them, you just pick a section and draw as the layout comes to you. So in a way, you could have an idea and just jump in to attempt and create an entire layout all at once. Sometimes that works very well. But in my experience, this method works best when you're redrawing and refining already existing layout. Once I've started from a single section, and in this case I started off with A site, and as I begin to expand, I jump all over the place. So I go to CT spawn, then I jump all the way up to T spawn, then draw a little bit of B site, and then jump back to A. So this method is a little bit easier to work with because I already know how the layout is going to flow. And all I'm doing is redrawing and refining some of the areas. And as I finish up, I grab another piece of paper and I simplify the layout to the essential path flow for each team. So just as we created this in method 1 and 2, I do the same thing in this method. I distill the layout to the main pathways, to the connected routes, define the CT and T spawns, identify the choke points, and now I am left with a top-down layout and a pathway flow, which I will use to get the template started for BSP blocking. So I hope these 3 methods were useful and they help you to create better hand-drawn top-down layouts.